Good afternoon, everyone. CO2 obviously blamed for everything that can go on in our climate. So they're going to try to explain that all-time record snows, heaviest snows in Moscow, where they have to call out the army of the snowfall of the century is blamed on CO2. I was waiting to check out the snow depth totals after the storms rolled through Italy and Eastern Europe, specifically Croatia, Slovenia area. This is how much snow has come down in Slovenia. 5 feet plus. Montenegro flooding off the cliffs. 25,000 lightning strikes and thunder snow events. Hail through Italy. Huge snows in northern France. Shelf clouds in Argentina. And look at the size of the hail that came down in Argentina as well. And while you're watching the video, please remember to subscribe to Adapt 2030 and click that bell so you can get the latest updates. And as always, every event that's happening in our climate system is now based on CO2 effects. So anything that ever happens is now always CO2. They can never come to grips with the sun is in charge and controls our planet's weather systems. So of course, extreme snows are going to have to be blamed on CO2. And when we're coming into a grand solar minimum, you would expect cooler temperatures and more snow in the northern hemispheric areas in the north. Moscow. All-time record snows that have never happened before. Multi-century snowfalls. So deep, in fact, that the Russian army was called out after snowfall of a century in Moscow. They even canceled school for the first time in 3 generations because of such harsh weather. Now, I've been following these snowstorms that have swept through France, Italy, and over into Eastern Europe, Montenegro, Slovenia, Croatia. So I wanted to finally get the snow totals in for you. And if you've been following the all-time record snowfalls in Morocco, Northern Africa, more snow has come down there, 3 more feet, all the way down to 600 feet right at the sea coastal areas. France, of course, heavy snows through the last week, but I wanted to focus on Italy here because they got 6.5 feet of new snow. Now, the Italian border areas with Slovenia, Croatia, let's take a look here at the map. Also on the border with Austria, you get in there Slovenia, Croatia, Montenegro, Bosnia-Herzegovina. And these areas not so much covered in the US media, so if you're not familiar with the area, it's a great tourism spot. I've been wanting to go to Montenegro for quite some time. And just old world history. But as we can see in Slovenia, 72 centimeters just in the last 30 hours. This was a few days ago. Catching up with the totals are coming in on the social media because the mainstream media is not following this. So these images and stories are coming out of social media feeds from people like you and myself posting. So I really encourage you to post these types of snowfalls that you know the mainstream won't pick up. So back February 3rd, just about a week ago, these were the totals, anywhere 4 or 5 feet. And even without drifting snow, this is down to 200 meters of elevation. That's another thing. All of these events were really low in altitude. It wasn't up at 3,000 meters at some ski resort. This was all right down at lower elevations. Look at some of the snow depths here, minimum 80 centimeters. And taking a look at people trying to unbury their cars, you can really see the depths. Northern Italy, 1,200 meters, no better. But then the ice came after that, and this is what's happened in the last couple of days. The ice storms have followed the snowstorms, and it's truly turned into a winter wonderland. Everything's blanketed in ice, so they've had an enormous amount of tree collapses, power outages, downed lines. Mix of snow and ice. Road conditions just as bad as we're seeing in the U.S. now with all the pileups. This is Slovenia. But further down in Montenegro, instead of snow, it was rain and cliffs turned into waterfalls. Let's jump over to France. Heavy snowfalls, paralyzing parts of Paris. They're already having the floods, but luckily a little respite because that precipitation's locked up in snowflakes now instead of raindrops. But then we have 25,000 lightning strikes coming across the Mediterranean region. Remember, the date on this would be February 8th. These severe thunderstorms coming in the middle of winter with ice and snow following behind. huge hail accumulations, but you shouldn't be getting this type of ferocious thunderstorms in the middle of winter. Now, speaking of which, I found some spectacular storm clouds over Argentina, these shelf clouds that rolled in. Spooky to say the least. If I was out in the water, I definitely would have gotten out at that point, knowing that the winds are going to accompany this front. And sure enough, blowing 60, 70 mile an hour winds after this rolled through. And look at the size of the hail that came down in Cordoba. That is a hand holding that hail. And look at the different shapes and sizes that's coming down. So what's happening in the different altitude levels, pretty interesting here. And as the cosmic rays continue to increase, you're going to see weather events like this continue to increase as we enter in the depths of the grand solar minimum. Thanks for watching. Hope you got something out of the video.